It's been really an honor and a pleasure to come to you people to tell you my story. It's very simple, you know. I just tell you what happened to me as a child. Unfortunately, you know, Holocaust survivors, when we arrived to Britain between 1945 and 1947, we never talked about it, you know, because there were so many reasons, and some of them like, who's going to believe us? You know, when we tell them about babies being killed and things like that. So unfortunately, it was a mistake. We should have started earlier, but eventually, about over 30 years ago, I started speaking about it. So I would like to tell you what happened to me as a child, and I go back till when I was about 3 years old. It's funny, I don't remember what I had for breakfast, but I remember what happened so far ago. So, you know, unfortunately, my parents got divorced and my mother left us. I didn't know where she went or what. She disappeared. And I was brought up by my grandparents, who were very Orthodox Jewish people. I was born in Poland, in a city called Lodz. It was the second largest city in Poland. It was. It isn't anymore. You'll find out later why it isn't. Anyway, but I had a very good life to begin with when, you know, when growing up, went to school, we had a lovely apartment. I've even had my own bed, my own bedroom. Can you imagine in the early 30s, in Poland especially, for a child to have his own bedroom? It was unheard of. People wouldn't believe it. Even my daughters wouldn't believe it till I took them there. Anyway, but I had a very good life till I was about 9 years old. My father worked for his father. He had a business, his own business, and my uncle worked in it. Everything was all right, you know. And I went to school like every child went. Well, till everything was going on well, till 1939, when the British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, sent an ultimatum to Hitler after talking to them many times. And he said, if you attack Poland, you'll be at war with us. By that time, half of Poland was already occupied by German troops. So on the 3rd of September 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. Within 6 weeks, the whole of Poland was occupied by German troops. Everything changed. First of all, no Jewish child was allowed to go to school. Didn't matter whether he was a Jewish school or a non-Jewish, he wasn't allowed. Teachers weren't allowed to teach. Doctors, lawyers, accountants weren't allowed to practice their own profession. And every morning, you know, we got up, there were on the wall, there were different things written out, what we're allowed to, what we're not allowed to, like you're not allowed to travel on public transport. We had trams in our city. If they caught a Jewish person, especially a man, they were recognized the way he was dressed and so on, had a beard, they slung him off, irrespective whether the tram was moving or it was stationary. They just didn't know. And all things like that. But the worst things, most of us, you know, were frightened to go out. But we had to. There was already very little food because the Polish farmers were frightened to come in, but eventually they did. So, you know, they met a Jewish man walking in the street, and a few soldiers, just for fun. They saw he was Jewish with his beard. They cut his beard off. And then if they were near a shop, they used to go and get a bucket of water and made him wash the pavement for no reason, just to humiliate him. Anyway, it was carrying on like that till November 1939. Then we got to know, because there was a Jewish group that were running us, and some officers came to them and they said, every Jew living in Łódź will have to go to a designated area, which was the poorest area of town. They said the Polish people will move out so that make more room. But to live a proper living in the place they asked us was a room enough for 20,000 people. And the city of Łódź had 265,000 Jews living there. Can you imagine? This is almost the same amount that Britain has got today, and this is one city. Anyway, they said there's no choice. By April the 1st, 1940, every Jew has to be inside. If anybody caught outside will be shot. So, my grandfather, my grandmother and I, because my father ran away and he managed to get into Russia. So we took a few cases, whatever we could carry, and we went to a place, just one solitary room. There was no running water. That meant there was no toilets, there was nothing. There was no choice. And they told us we are lucky because we are only 3 people. Anyway, went in. By April the 1st, it was completely surrounded by barbed wire. You couldn't get in, you couldn't get out. And everybody inside was Jewish, not Polish, not even German. Everything was done by the Jewish people. There was even Jewish police. So, when we came in there, they told us after a while, everybody's got to go to work. If you don't go to work, you won't get any food. So my grandmother got to work for tailoring. They were producing stuff for the German army there, and I got a job in the metal factory. They were also producing, I didn't even know what it was, but it was stuff for their armies. My grandfather, unfortunately, couldn't get a job because he was getting ill, and within a very short time he died because he ate very little that wasn't allowed to eat for Jewish people, that they were very religious. Anyway, it was left my grandma and I. I worked 6 days a week from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. Lunchtime, I used to get a soup. We used to get a soup, so it was like water with a few vegetables swimming around. If the person that was giving out the soup liked you, or maybe he knew you, he dug a bit deeper. And it was even a piece of meat. So every time I say that, especially in young schools with young students, and they say to me, how could you eat meat, horse meat? I said, we would have eaten anything. We would have eaten dogs and cats as well. If you are starving, and I hope you'll never find out what starvation is. I always say that to students. But never, never say to your mom and dad, I'm starving when you come back. Because starving is a completely different thing, and thank God we don't starve here. Anyway, it was carrying on like that, and of course, people are dying from starvation. They didn't have enough medications, and a lot of them were committing suicide, especially women. And I could never understand it, and I kept on saying to my grandmother, I said, why do they kill themselves? And she wouldn't answer me. I found out myself. Can you imagine, after a while, can you imagine a mother losing a child, 2, 3, or even more children from starvation? or for lack of food. Anyway, it's carrying on like that, and one day some officers came to the people that were running the ghetto, and they said they need 70,000 people to go to work in Germany. They asked the Jewish police to supply them, they couldn't do it. So the German officer said, there's no problem, nobody's going to go to work for a whole week. We go from street to street, house to house, and get the people we want. They said to us, the Jewish people, the police or whoever they were, they said, we'll let you know a night before when they're coming for next day. So I said, all right. When the time came, my grandmother says she's going into hiding. Would I go with her? I said, what do I need to go with you? I'm 10 years old already. But, or 12 years old, 12 years old. They won't need me. I look about 10, 9 years old. They need grown-ups that can produce more stuff when they take them to Germany. So she says, all right, because she's going into hiding. So she went into hiding, I went. I stayed, went to sleep, got up in the morning. They told us to go downstairs. Big lorries were there, and they started taking people. And they took me as well. And you know, all through my life, I was always lucky. And this time I realized how lucky I was. Anyway, when I looked who was there was babies, children, young kids, disabled people. And when I looked at it, and I jumped off the lorry. And where my luck was, first of all, the lorry wasn't moving yet. And secondly, the guards were in the yard because you went through a yard and all through different houses, and they were there still taking people. Anyway, I ran, and eventually I hid myself and stayed there for quite a long time. Eventually, it came in the morning or night, I didn't know when even, I went back home. Eventually my grandmother came, and after a few days we had to go back to work. We don't know how many people they took, whether it was 70,000 or 60,000. All I can tell you, not one of us had anything from them. Not a letter, nothing. We didn't hear a thing. Anyway, we left there when we stayed there and worked, and more people were dying and dying. So one day I said to my grandmother, so many people are taken away, so many people have died, why can't we get somewhere else to live? At least we'll get running water. She said there isn't. Lodz Ghetto was the longest lasting ghetto. It started April 1940, finished in the summer of 1944. And they were bringing in people from all over Europe, even from Germany, Jewish people. So there was never any room. So it was carrying on like that, and most people were dying. And people ask me today, how did you survive? I wish I could tell you, but I don't. You know, anyway, it was carrying on like that. And then one day in the summer of 1944, some officers came and said to the people that were running the ghetto, we got to close the ghetto because the Russians are already near Warsaw. It took them about a day or two to cross the Vistula River, and they'll be here. But they told us the people that working in the metal factory can go as a group to Germany to work. So I said to my grandmother, I said, I'd rather go with the group that I know the people that I work with. So she said she'll come with me. They told us we're only allowed to take one suitcase each because where we are going, there everything is 100 times better. You'll have food and drinks and stuff to wear, everything. So my grandmother said she'll come with me. So we took 2 suitcases, 1 suitcase each. That's what we allowed. We went to the factory. And they said they let us know when to report to the railway station. So after a few days, they told us tomorrow morning you'll report to the railway station. We took our cases in the morning and went to the railway station. The first thing I said to my grandmother, I can't see any trains. She said, they're standing in front of you. I said, they're cattle trucks, or whatever they were called. She says, they can't be for, I said, they can't be for us. But she said, it looks like it. They opened those doors of those trucks. And they took us in. There was no way we could sit down. If you sat down, somebody was sitting on you or stepped on you, because they were so packed. The German guards had problems to close those doors. Anyway, when they closed those doors, and I was standing or sitting, I don't know what I was doing, but I recently told people about it. My two daughters, I was telling my two daughters about this, just that train. I said, and something has been on my mind, on my brain, and I can't get rid of it. They said, what did you do? Did you do something bad? I said, I did nothing. So what happened? How can a child of 14, hope people should die so he'll have room where to sit down? What has become of me? I was completely dehumanized. All I wanted was to live. Anyway, after a few days, because every morning the train stopped, they took out dead bodies and threw them out, and eventually I had a place where to sit down. And whenever I talk about it, I feel so bad. But anyway, eventually one day the train stopped. It was early morning. Through the slits of the truck, I saw the word Auschwitz. I didn't have a clue what it was. Underneath it said Oświęcim. So I said Oświęcim. Somebody shouted out, that's only a little town near Krakow. Anyway, they opened those gates. They told us to leave everything there because everybody's going to showers. So we had to jump off, and people were, of course, beaten because they were slow. They couldn't get up. They couldn't get down. They had problems. Anyway, we were one of the few transport arriving in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And it was Birkenau, and Birkenau was an extermination camp. But we were one of the few places that they took us. We were the whole of the lot that were going on the metal factory to Germany. They called out our names, so we went to one side, but there were other people on the train. They had to go through a selection, so it's like and they were running down, and they were showing left, right. All the people that went to the left were old people, disabled people, children, women holding babies. The German guards came over to those women holding the babies and asked them to put the baby down and go to the other side. Can you imagine a mother doing it? She wouldn't do it. They tried to rip that baby out. If they didn't succeed by ripping it out, they even shot the baby. And sometimes the woman. Anyway, when it was finished, they took him to the showers. That's what they told him. They took him to a room. They put those people in. They shut those doors. A German guard went to the back of the building. There was a little window. He opened the window, threw some Cyclone B gas. Within 20 minutes, all those people in that room was dead. women, children, babies, disabled people. And and I always want to ask people a question, but I don't, because I know I won't get an answer. How could a human being do that? Dinner time, knowing what he was doing during the day, and having his wife and children, and having his dinner, and listen to the music, knowing what he was doing during the day. And I'm talking about doctors, lawyers, engineers, not some scum. And people say to me, most of the time they say to me, how come they did that the soldiers, the officers had families? Some of them did. Even the boss, of the group, the officer, he had his wife and 2 children 10 meters away from the gas chamber. And there is some people here today that have been recently to Germany, to Poland, to visit Auschwitz. Anyway, when they were finished with them, they took us to the barracks, to the showers. We had to undress. When you come out the other side, you get your clothes back. They shaved everybody. Then they put disinfectant on us, and then we went to the shower. Then they gave us not our clothes back, but I'm sure some of you have read the book or saw the film The Boy in Striped Pyjamas. That's what we got. For some reason, up till today, we don't know why they didn't tattoo number of us. But I had a number, 84,303, and I can't get rid of that number. I wish I could forget it. I don't remember my debit card or credit card, but I remember that number, 84,303. And even, unfortunately, my grandson made a film about me. And I never knew. And one day I said to him, what's the film? What is it called? He said 84,303. And I can't get it out of my mind. Anyway, when they were finished with us, they took us to barracks and they said we are very lucky because there's room for 500 people and we have about 500 something, 50, because we are not enough. If it would have been more people, we would have slept 4, 5, 6 in a bunk. I don't know how it would have been possible, but that's what they told us. We slept 3 to a bunk. There was 3 bunks, one on top of the other. And then when we got up in the morning, before that in the evening, they gave us something to eat, and they said, you'll get it in the evening, and you get it in the next day in the evening, nothing for lunch. So it was a piece of bread and some black coffee. I never drank coffee in my life. And the grown-ups were saying, that's not coffee. I said, well, in the morning we get the same. So we went to sleep. In the morning we woke up and we were starving. We thought we get a piece of bread. No, we had to be counted. So they started counting us, but there were people missing. But nobody could escape from Birkenau, because Birkenau was right, almost a camp inside the other, right next to Auschwitz. They had electrified fences and guards on top. You could not escape. So when the guards went into the room, they found the people. Some were dead, and some were still alive. Those that were still alive, they took them out. They said they're taking him to the hospital. We found out later there was no such a thing as a hospital. There was one little thing, that a German doctor was committing crimes. He was killing babies, throwing babies into ice-cold water to see how long that baby will live. When they operated on children and babies, if the baby was still alive after the operation, when it got better, they did a different operation, just playing with lives. And he was one of the officers that, unfortunately, I just forgot the name, it'll come back to me, that survived even after the war.
Dr. Mengele.
Dr. Mengele. See, unfortunately, I don't remember things so much. And that doctor. Now, how can a doctor, when he swore to save lives, to kill children, babies? I'll never understand it. Anyway, when they were finished, they gave us a piece of bread, and they didn't allow us to stay in the barracks, but it was still end of August and so on. And we stayed there for a while. You couldn't stay longer than they told us, the people told us that were working there, then 3 months. Either they sent you to another camp or to a labor camp working, or they took you to the gas chambers. So we knew we've got problem, but after a few weeks, some officers came and they said they were looking for us. Anyway, they're going to take us to Germany to work. So they said they come after a few days. So they came after a few days and took us all to another camp called Stutthof, that's near Gdańsk, near Danzig. And there I had a problem. I never thought before that I was going to die. I saw my friends dying next to me, but I never thought I was going to die. Except this time. Because not only the food, no food, very little food, but the weather. It was already getting very, very cold, and the only way to keep warm, a few of us, quite a few of us, made a ring, and we stayed cut. We were holding each other, and eventually the people from inside came out so that the others came, get warm. I went inside, I went outside, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Anyway, carried on like that for a while, and then one day some officers came and they said if they want 20 boys to go to work on the somewhere there, I don't know, on the line or whatever. So they asked for 17, so I couldn't do anything. When they said 16, I lifted my hand. Anyway, they took me as well, and they said they'll pick us up in about 3 days' time. So all the grown-ups said, why did you volunteer? They're going to kill you. I said, I'm going to die here anyway. So maybe it'll be better. They wouldn't have it. Anyway, they came for us. They took us on passenger trains, us 20. We went to a small camp. There was only 1,500 people, and we worked on a railway line. And there was always chance to steal. All we were interested, those friends of mine, was of food, nothing else. So we used to steal. Sometimes we had so much I couldn't eat my piece of bread. So I went to sleep without eating, but I couldn't go to sleep because a piece of bread worried me. I had to eat it up. Anyway, one day some young people, not the ones that came with me, stole some tobacco that was going for the Germans fighting the Russians. We were very near Russian as well. So they said, they caught them, there was 5 or 6, I don't remember. They put them in a room, they keep them for 6 days without food, without water. When the time came for them to be left out, they took us to come to that place, and we found gallows, so we know what's going to happen. And a German officer started reading out for stealing those cigarettes or tobacco, whatever it was, number of men that stole it will be hung. All the boys are jumped off themselves. They wouldn't give the Germans, that's what we assumed, give the Germans the satisfaction that they should do it, that they will do it. So they all jumped off. And that is a thing that I cannot forget, you know. Whenever I think about it, I talk about it, I can see young men standing there alive, and I mean 2 minutes later they are dead. Anyway, us they took back to work, and after a while they said the Russians are coming. They took us to another camp, also to Stutthof back again, but only for a short time. Then they took us one day, they came, they said, we're going to Germany now. We'll go on coaches, and there were nice coaches came. They took us to Gdańsk, from Stutthof to Gdańsk, and from there we had to walk. Unfortunately, I was already ill, but there was no chance to get anything, but I couldn't walk. My friends helped me to walk, because when we came to the Polish port, they said, from now you'll have to walk. Every concentration camp, every extermination camp that was liquidated went on a death march. Why was it called a death march? Very simple. Either you walked or you died. Because if you fell, they shot you. If you said you can't walk, they shot you. But I couldn't walk, and I said to my friends, I can't walk, neither can you. But no, they said, we won't leave you. So we walked, and people were being shot all the time. You could hear the noise, and my friends would not let me go. Eventually, we came to a German, not to a port, but there was near the water. And we had some also Danish and Norwegian prisoners of war on there. They are much stronger than us. They didn't, in the holes they weren't. They could walk, they could do anything, you know, they could eat. And they said to us, we are near the water, we must be near a German port, because the guards were left for the night. Anybody that wants to can run away and hide yourself somewhere. It's all farms, they said, but there are some buildings where the people live. You can steal, you can have this, you can have that. Why don't you go? So I said to my friend, go. They wouldn't leave me. Anyway, the Germans came, and like I said, my friends took me, and they said it's only 15 kilometers that we've got to walk. And I looked at my friends. 15 kilometers, it could be 15 centimeters I couldn't walk, and 15 kilometers, it's 10 miles roughly. They said, you know, you'll have to. You know what will happen? I said, I know, but I've got to do it. They said, we will not do. We will go walk with you. So that was the second time they walked with me, and walked, we walked. All of a sudden we came to a German port, and there was 3 enormous big ships there. And they told us 2 of the ships are already full with prisoners. You go on the 3rd one. So we all thought we know what's going to happen. They take us to the middle of the sea, and they're going to explode those boats. And the funny thing was, about 4 years ago, I saw the documentary on Sky Television, and it was called Hitler's Titanic. It was about one of those boats. So we were waiting, all of a sudden, you know, there were planes above us. So we were sure there were British or American or Russian planes, because those soldiers told us, those prisoners, that the war's near the end. They couldn't be Germans. and we were hoping they'll start bombing. And one boat was hit. One of the ships was hit with people on it. Not most, but a lot of them jumped off those ships. Most of them to their death. It carrying on like that, carrying on, and they were screaming and shouting. Then it stopped. We couldn't see fire, we could see smoke. And we were sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And all of a sudden they started screaming and shouting and doing with their hands. We couldn't understand what's going on. Till somebody said to us, "Look around you. You're surrounded by British tanks." That was 3rd of May 1945 that I was liberated. The first thing I did on my force, I crawled over to the tank, and I needed water, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't speak English. I could speak German, Yiddish, Polish. Anyway, I said Wasser, which is Yiddish and German. And he understood, the soldier understood, the British soldier. He gave me something, I don't remember what it was, but there was water. I drank it, and then some British officers came, and they said, "You know, you are free now. This is a German port, and you'll be living here. You're here now, and this is a German port. It's full of food. Go and help yourself. And there is no German soldier or anybody. Everybody you'll see is British." So my friends left me with one of the boys or two. The others went. They came back with masses of food. We could not stop eating. This was one of the worst things that the British soldiers did to us. They meant well. They saw us. They could see how, but they didn't realize that we'll eat so much. And we did. There were people dying in the middle of the road with a piece of fruit or something, because they came with masses of food. Boxes even that were supposed to be given to the American prisoners of war, and they didn't give them. When we opened them, there was tins of meat, tins of pineapple. Didn't know what a pineapple was, and things like that, and it was carrying on and carrying on. Anyway, they took us. Eventually, my friends found where to stay. There was a little house, which we assumed it was for German prisoners if they were put there. Anyway, we were there. I went to sleep on a white sheet on a single bank, and I said to my friends, "Look at it, white sheet, first time in 5 years." I got up in the morning. I said to my friends, "Look at that, it's black." They said, "Do you remember last time you washed?" I said, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, I don't know. They said, but when I looked again, it wasn't just dirt, it was lice. My clothes were saturated in lice, you know. Anyway, some officers came. They said, "Anybody that is not well, we'll take to hospital." Not one of them said a word, because we remembered Auschwitz-Birkenau. And we didn't. When they did the second day the same, the third day, I lifted my hand, I couldn't speak. I stayed 3 months in hospital. Eventually they started to teach me to walk and so on. And then I met a nurse and I said, what was wrong with me? So she had typhus. I didn't have a clue what typhus was. Now, how did I survive being there? How did I survive having typhus? No medication, no nothing, not water even. How did I survive? When I asked a priest, when I asked a rabbi, they gave me an answer. They said, he wanted you. Well, being 89 now, I might I should be friends with God. So they asked me, do you believe in God? I said, look, I don't know. I will not tell you that there is no a God. I don't know. I don't know. So that's how it is, you know. So, like I said, I got better and better. Then when nurse came, it was already German, the doctors were still British. They said, you'll soon be able to leave. I said, where am I going? There's a camp here, very near here. So I said, a camp? I've had enough of camps, I'm not going to a camp. You are looked after the British and American Army. So go. It's not fenced. You can go to town, you can do anything. I said, good. What have I got to wear? I've got nothing. You burnt my clothes. I said, don't worry about it. I'll see what I can do. I've already got an English boyfriend. Maybe he'll give me something. A few days later, of all things, she comes with a British uniform. So she says, I'll have to alter it. I laughed. I thought it was that big. So she says, but you've got to promise me you'll never wear that uniform in the city or town or anything. I promise you. We are very good liars, I must tell you, all of us. So she took it away. She came back with underwear, shoes, everything new. She said, you remembered what you said? I said, yes. 2 boys came for me. They picked us up. We went to that camp. It was most of us youngsters. We stayed there, looked after by the British and American. Then they took us to a little village. We learned a little bit. There was only about 40 kids of us, and then we heard that Britain and Sweden is allowing 1,000 children to come to their country. You could also go to Palestine, but there you had to wait. So when they came to me, they said, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Sweden? I said, no. Do you want to go to Britain? No. Or England? I didn't know what Britain was. England? No. So where do you want to go? I'll go to Palestine. But they said, it's a quota. You'll have to wait and wait. I said, so I'll wait. I've got nobody in London. Why will I go to England or Sweden? Anyway, I didn't. From there, where I was, they took us we were waiting, and then they took us to Hamburg. Unfortunately, I needed an operation because I hurt myself. It was my own fault, and I shouldn't have done it. It wasn't nice. Anyway, I hurt myself. They took me to hospital. I was there for 2 weeks. 2 friends came, and they said, they gave me a letter from London, England. Who will write to me from London, England? I opened that letter, written by a woman in Polish. She said and I started reading, and she says she remembered she had a son living in the same place that I used to live, the same name, except it was a different age. And so I said, it can't be my mother. I said, good. Then when I read on, she says she remembered when her son was 2.5, burned himself on her left wrist. Maybe there's still a sign. Could I have a look at the wrist? Now, that was in 1945. So I looked at my wrist. From the distance, you might not see him. Can you see this? And I looked at my 2 friends, and I said, it is my mother, and she wants me to come to live with her. And I looked at my friends, I said, no way. I said, I don't know the woman. She's a stranger. You are my family. Because all those kids were going to Israel. No, I said, I won't do it. When I came back, they brought me back to where we stayed. We were looked after again, British and American, and the Jewish Brigade, which was part of Britain. They went mad with me. How can you not go? Look at your friends. They had brothers and sisters, and they've got nobody. And funny enough, 2 of them, or 3 of them, but 2 of them, I'm very friendly with, had brothers and sisters, and they've got nobody. Nobody at all. They're not mothers, fathers, uncles, nobody. Anyway, they decided, they went mad, like I said, and I said yes. It took me 9 months. Eventually I came to England, to Hull. A man met me on the boat. On the boat, he came over, started speaking in Yiddish because I couldn't speak English. Then I found out he was the husband of my mother. He said, when you get your cases, we'll go on the train to London. I burst out laughing. What cases? What? I had a paper bag with photographs that we took. All we did is take photographs. Anyway, I came to London, got my mother with father, and my stepfather. We lived very near here, Tottenham Court Road. This is a funny thing, you know. And whatever I wanted, they gave us, both of them. But I missed my family. The first 6 months were hell for me. One day I was walking in the street and I met somebody and he said, you know those kids that came in 1945, that Britain allowed 1,000 children, only 700 came, 300 and something came to Windermere. And they took them all. They never brought them to big cities or towns. They brought them there. So I said, why don't you go there? They've got a club in Belsize Park. Go there. Opposite there is a church. On Sunday or Saturday night they have dancing there for us. They allowed, the church allowed us to come. I said, all right, I'll go. So I went one Sunday, knocked on the door, they opened the door. I couldn't speak, but I spoke. The sentence I uttered is written today in a book called The Boys. I said, at last I found my family again. And some of them I didn't even know, and they were my family. And all of us were. My life changed. Everything changed. I started to work in tailoring, and I hated it. And I started going out with a girl, and I said to her, when the boss says will tell me I can make a suit, or the jacket, they didn't make trousers, I'll give up. And I did. Anyway, eventually, you know, I couldn't tell you what a life I had. I had the most wonderful, wonderful life. And I'm always asked by young students, young ones, did you ever meet Hitler? I said, no, thank God I didn't. But today I would love to meet him. It would do so much for me to show him my family of 2 daughters, 4 grandsons, 2 granddaughters. You think it's the 8? No. 3 great-grandsons. And I would like to say to him, you see my family? You try to kill 6 million Jewish people, 1.5 million kids, children. You killed over 1 million Polish Christians. You meet 50% of the gypsies of Europe. All those people, we must not forget all of them. And I don't, you know. So I would. But I cannot tell you, eventually, like I said, I got married. The greatest thing in my life happened to me is I can say that because my 2 children are, especially one not here. When I got married, I went into the stationery and printing business. Right up to 2002, even my business was 5 minutes from here. That's why I had to give up, because the rent we got. Some friends of mine took over the business and I was involved in it. No working, nothing, but I made some money out of it. Anyway, I cannot tell you, but the greatest thing in my life was, and still is, when my wife said to me after a while that she's pregnant, and then she went to hospital. She was ready to produce. It was in St. John's Wood. It was run in them days not by doctors naturally, but not ordinary nurses. It was a very religious nurses. You see, I forget certain names. Yeah, Danes, yeah. Anyway, and when I came up at night, we weren't allowed to be there when the baby was born. But I knew that it was a daughter, a girl. And the nurse came over to me. He gave me that little bundle. I couldn't stop crying. I was choking. I went over to my wife and I said, at last we've got something that is ours. And like I said today, I'm blessed with 2 daughters, and the young ones always say to me when she said, Dad, don't say it, because what about me? Not me, only you other. And my 2 daughters, they drive me completely crazy. They ring me twice a day. Have you eaten? Yes. Have you got food for tonight? Yes. I'll bring you some soup. No, you don't have to. All the time. One, which some of you know, one of my daughters, some know both, gave up work about a month ago to look after her mother, my wife, because she's not a well woman. Unfortunately, she got problem with memory, and I think I'm getting with it. She remembers what happened 60 years ago, where we went on holidays, who was the manager of the hotel and the name of that. But she won't remember what she had for breakfast. So you know what that is. Anyway, but I could never thank the British people enough for what they did for me. I'm here, like my little Elliot, my little grandson once said to me, Grandpa, you are so lucky to be alive. So his mother said to him, you too. He couldn't understand it, so we're alive. And you might think for a Holocaust survivor, some of us good survivors did not agree with me. I don't like, especially young children, especially the earliest I speak to is year 9, which is 14, 15 and so on. I don't want them to go home crying. That won't help. And the parents will say, why did they do that to you? Why did they make my daughter or son cry? So I am. Believe me, when I leave, I don't live the Holocaust. I never talk to my children about the things. They ask me questions, yes. Anybody that asks me, yes. But I don't talk about it. And I've been so lucky. I cannot tell you enough. If they'll show you, I gave them a thing to show and they don't know how to do it, You know who you people are. So I don't want you to go home crying. Just think of it and talk about it, especially youngsters. Talk to your children. Talk to your grandchildren. Because it's so important. It's not only for Jewish people. Look what's happening in the world. Killing, and killing. And I would like to know who ever won a war. Nobody wins a war. We all lose. Britain won the war. Look how many thousands and thousands and thousands of people died. So none wins a war. Why? We all going to die anyway. Eventually we'll die. I've got another 50 years, you know. I'm only 89, but no. I love that when they say to me, a lot of people grown up, you know, teachers and so on, they say, would you like to live somewhere else? Bless you. Would you like to live somewhere else? No. Wouldn't you like to go back to Poland? I'm a foreigner there. Wouldn't you like to go to Israel? I like going to Israel, but I will not leave Britain. This is my country. I feel so British, you know. I would never, never. So now I'm talking to the grown-ups, yes. But you see, I told you I wouldn't like to live anywhere. But if any of you want to buy me a home in Monaco or the south of France, I will accept it. So you cannot tell you what a life I had. And I could stay here till tomorrow morning, which you don't want to. And most of you will say they've got to go back. So thank you very much. Oh. Thank you. That's all right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Please. I'll sit down again. Oh, and up.
Thank you, Ziggy, so much for sharing your amazing experiences. I'm just going to hand over to James now, who's going to moderate our Q&A. We have a mic in the middle, so please feel free to walk up to the mic and ask any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Ali, and thank you again, Ziggy. It's an amazing story and a really inspirational and eye-opening. We thought it would be good for people in the audience maybe to ask you questions.
No problem.
We really appreciate your time. So, I'll start off with a question, and hopefully other people.
The first one is always a bit difficult. Even with grown-ups, you should see with little kids. Yeah.
I don't see any hands shooting up, so I'll ask you the first question. How do you feel? What was it that has enabled you to have such a great attitude now? Because I think all of us picked up on the way as you spoke that you don't gloss over everything. You know, you're very honest about everything that happened, but your attitude is so positive, and I think it's hard to imagine how one goes through that and comes out with the kind of incredible attitude you have.
Well, it's maybe I don't know whether the world, maybe I was lucky. How to survive, nobody can tell you how. It's an impossibility to tell you, because he was strong, he was just as bad. He couldn't. Nobody could survive because of that. So it was just pure luck. And like I said before, maybe God wanted you to survive. That's what they tell me. Maybe a priest says that. Maybe, I don't know, But no, I went through life, and what is more important, I don't live the Holocaust. As some of us didn't, we were lucky because we were in a group. We used to talk about it. Where were you in the camp? Where were you? Oh, mine was worse. One was better. I used to get better. The German officers were better. If they were, we didn't know. Some had. We were never miserable. Very few of us. A lot of them that didn't talk about it and didn't mix with Holocaust survivors. When they grew up and they got married, they could never forget it, in their brain. They lived it, So, but no, most of us had a good life. There were 99% of the people that came here, and we're with a group. We all did pretty well. Some did better, some will. I got a picture, I wish I would, which most of you, not most, but some of you might know, Ben Helfgott. When he came here, his sister, he didn't know he had a sister, because her sister went to Sweden, and eventually he found her sister. And he had family, but not from Poland, from when he lived. He lived 45 kilometers from where I lived, in a small town he lived. When people, 45 miles, when people went from his place, or kilometers, to my place, they used to say goodbye to the whole families, because it was so far. Nobody had cars or anything, So, no. So he had a sister, and, but some of my friends that were together, what came with band together in 1945, they had nobody. They only people, we are, even those that are alive today, we are brothers and sisters. I'm nearer to my friends than I would have been nearer to my brothers and sisters.
That's amazing. I think that's really. I think we all.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming and telling your story. And we're very lucky to have you here. My question is about your grandmother. What happened to her, and when was the last time you saw her?
I'm so pleased you asked me, because I always say that later, because I never say that in the ordinary time. Also my father. Well, my father, I found out that he went back from Russia to Poland. He went to Warsaw in 1941 or 42, and he couldn't get into the Lodz Ghetto, because Lodz, was Germany. They called it Germany, where Warsaw was occupied by German troops. So he got into Germany. That's what I found out. From then on, I have not found out anything about my father, whether he was killed, whether he died in Warsaw, or whether he was taken away to other extermination camps, because it wasn't just Birkenau, It was so many different ones, Helmno. It was Treblinka, Majdanek, Helmno, Bobibo. So all those places lived only 10 months or a year. Afterwards, after a year or 10 months, they made it a garden, because they didn't want German people to know. Their own people should know. So that, and my grandmother, I found out, about 2 years or 3 years after the war, that she died of the day of the liberation of Czechoslovakia. And it was just, she didn't even have 1 day of freedom, and I would have loved to have had her at least once to put my arm around her and say, thank you, Grandma, for bringing me up. I didn't have that opportunity, no.
Thank you so much for sharing. I have 2 questions. One, you say you don't grieve the Holocaust and your experience, but how much is it on your mind? Do you ever daydream about it? Do you ever dream about it at night? And then also, how long did it take you to feel comfortable to speak to groups and be so open?
Well, I feel very comfortable in my life. I never talk about it. I never think about it. I think about it naturally, because I've got so many times to go to places. I go to, not to Great Britain. I don't go to London. Very seldom that I get Londons. Only lately I get the Royal Bank of Scotland that I went to, and then another one with the name of a man that was, he was involved, the building in the city of London. It's all to do with lawyers. What was it?
Ernst and Young.
I see.
Ernst and Young.
Yeah, it could have been him. I don't know that I spoke to could have been, listen, can you imagine? Me, HET, I work with HET mainly. And HET, Holocaust Educational Trust, they had a lot of people talking, but when come to go on the train, very few wanted to go. When I said to somebody from London, I said, I'm going to speak to Brighton. Brighton? I said, it takes an hour and a bit by train. What's the matter with you? No. When I said I go to Glasgow or Edinburgh or even further, then Edinburgh, 3.5 hours by car from Edinburgh I go to the mountains, where the mountains are and beautiful. I go there. I used to go with my wife. Now I go with my daughters because she can't do it. And it's a funny thing. I found we are all the same. We're either good or bad, nothing else. It didn't make any difference whether you are Jewish, whether you are Muslim, whether you are Christian. We are 95% people are good. It's just the 5% that are not good. And unfortunately, all of us, the good ones, we only stand by. We do very little about it. But I am so happy about the third generation is involved. And I'm talking now like Holocaust Educational Trust. They've got student ambassadors now. That they go to schools and talk. To their own school, if they're still there, or to other schools where they live. Thousands and thousands of ambassadors, and 99 3/4 are not Jewish. Because how many Jews? 265,000, so it's not a lot, And how many Jewish schools have you got? One day I was talking to somebody in Liverpool. After I spoke, my son would love to hear you. So I said, where does he go to school? King David School. I said, so you are Jewish? She said, no. King David School now has got less than 50% of Jewish people. Manchester has got the same problem because most of the young people want to come to London. It's a better life or something.
My grandmother was also a survivor from Łódź, and she died about 10 years ago. She spoke quite a bit when she was alive, and one of the things that's been on my mind since then is the fact that no one's really telling her story now. And what would you like to happen? Like how would you see your story continuing to be told, either by your family or by other people? And what would you like those of us who will be around, what would you like us to do?
People have got to realize that all the fighting and all the killing won't help. Why do you have to fight? Why do you have to... Well, you are British, you are English, you are Chinese, you are German, and people ask me, do you hate the German people? Why should I hate the German people of today? Because your great-grandfather, your great-uncle committed a crime. It's not your fault. And I pray of it. I always say that, please, don't hate people. They are knowing me. Everybody knows me. Ziggy that doesn't hate. And one day my daughter said, Dad, sometimes you tell lies. I say, what have I done now? I won't tell you the name, but she says, what about the footballer you hate? So I said, you're quite right. I don't hate him anymore. I don't like him. You see, why hate people? Why? We're all the same. And we're all going to die eventually. Please don't hate. And I honestly don't hate the German people. Because, first of all, so the people say they're very clever, and they say to me, so you forgive them, do you? I said, hold on a second, I never said that. I don't forgive. The people that did it, I couldn't forgive. Even if I would want to forgive, I feel that I'm not allowed to forgive. God can forgive. The children, the people that are dead can forgive. But I feel I cannot forgive the people. But I've been many times to Germany, not on holidays, by the way, because for me there's nowhere to go on holidays. You know, I've been quite few, you know, and nobody has ever come to me and apologized and said, I'm sorry, I was in the SS, I had to do this, I had to do that. I said, all right. But nobody has ever came to me to say that. I was in Hamburg and there was a group of people there and working for the Holocaust. And I said to them, have you got any Jewish there? No. I said, why not? He says, because I feel guilty that I would feel guilty a Jewish person should do it. We want to do that. And they were helping a lot. You know, and now there's a lot of Jewish people living in Hamburg, most of them Russians that went to live there. So no. No, but you've got to just talk and talk about it.
I wonder how you would recommend teaching younger generations now about the Holocaust so that it stays very present in their mind.
They should talk about it all the time. It's not a question of going to Auschwitz again and all the rest of it, but if you're going, I never said to anybody, not even my family, you must go to the camps, to visit the camps. If you want to go, if you feel you should go, you should go. But I would never, never tell people you must go. But you must read about it. You must go to places about it. Talk about it. Talk if you've got children of already 11, 12. Talk about it, because after 11 they already teach. But the teaching is very little. I must tell you, I've been to Scotland, to places, never mind they didn't know anybody from a Holocaust that was in a Holocaust place. They have never seen a Jew, which is normal, you know. They live there, up in the mountain, there's no Jewish people living there. So they never, but we're all, to me, we are all the same. It doesn't make any difference whether we are Jews or whether we are Muslim. We should not hate each other. I mean, Muslims, their religion is very similar to our religion, you know. So why do we hate each other?
Thank you so much. I think that we couldn't have heard it any better from anyone better. Your energy and your spirit is incredible. I hope we all, as youthful as you are at 89, thank you again for your time and for your insights.
It's been a pleasure and an honor, a real honor, to have so many people like, what's her name, to take me, to bring me here to speak to you, because this is the thing. And this is most of done, what was done today, by the third generation.
Yep.
The second generation never did that, you know. They never even told us, go to a school, speak. It had to be groups. But here now, where I went to the other, which I told you, in the city of London, and to places like that, was all done by young people. Like, look at it.
We've got the message. Thank you very much. We will all take your message, yes, and keep the torch going. But thank you.
If later, when I'm finished, now that I'm finished, but anybody that wants to speak to me, to ask me the question whether I'm still religious, I will answer you this question.
Thank you.